Alright, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Formula, it looks a little complicated, but once we get into it, hopefully you understand it a little better. Alright. And remember, quadratic equations are written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, this is standard form, rather. But a quadratic equation has to have that x squared term, all right? So basically, we're going to take a, b, and c from our quadratic equation here and plug it into this formula to solve. I'm going to show you 5 examples in this video. The first being one where it is already in standard form. Second one is not going to be in standard form. The third one, I'm going to show you how to simplify the radical to get your final answer. And the fourth one will be one with one solution, and the fifth one will be one with no solution. All right, so stay tuned to learn how to solve quadratic equations. All right, so let's go ahead and just label it A, B, and C. So A has to be in front of your x squared term. B has to be in front of your x term, and C has to be your constant. So that is how you label it. So even if this were out of order, again, A has to be in front of the squared term, B in front of the x, and C is the number by itself or the constant. All right. So now we're just going to take the numbers 2, 3, and negative 5 and plug it into this formula. So x is equal to negative b, that is going to be negative 3, or we could say the opposite of b. If b were already negative, then that would be a positive 3. All right. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. So 4, a is 2, c is negative 5, all over 2 times a, and a is 2. All right, so I've gotten the hard part out of the way of just plugging it in, and now I just want to simplify this equation. All right, so negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared is 9. And I like to look at this as a negative 4 and just multiply straight across. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And negative 8 times negative 5 is a positive 40. So I'm going to put plus 40 since it's positive. All right. All over 2 times 2, and that is 4. Next, just simplifying it. Negative 3 plus or minus 9 plus 40 is 49, all over 4. Simplifying even more, that's a perfect square. The square root of 49 is 7. So 3 plus or minus 7, or negative, all over 4. All right. So when I get to this point, I want to go ahead and break up my problem into 2 equal problems, okay? Because many quadratic equations have 2 solutions, because remember, the solution is where that graph is going to cross the x-axis, and it's that U-shaped graph, all right? So that's going to be negative 3 plus 7 over 4, and I want to use the minus. X equals negative 3 minus 7 over 4. All right, so just simplifying it, negative 3 plus 7, that is 4 over 4, which reduces to 1. So one of my solutions is x equals 1. And negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 over 4. And that reduces to negative 5 halves, or negative 5 over 2. All right, so those are my 2 solutions, x equals 1 and x equals negative 5 over 2. So I have solved this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. We have 2x equals x squared minus 3. And we notice that it is not in standard form. So what I want to do, I want everything to be on one side because my equation has to equal 0. All right. So normally the 0 would be on the right. But since I only have a 2x over here, it's going to be easier to move this across the equal sign. So remember, when you move anything across the equal sign, you use inverse operations. All right. So since this 2x is positive, I'm going to subtract it to move it over. Okay. And it's going to cancel out on my left-hand side. So I'm left with 0 equals. None of these are like terms. So I want to write it in standard form. I want my x squared term to be first. So I'm going to bring down this x squared. I want my x term second. So that's going to be a minus 2x right here. And then my constant is last. That's a minus 3. So it looks a little different, but again, you just want everything to be on one side. All right. So now I could label it A, B, and C. So let's work it out. Negative B. So you got a negative times a negative, right? Plus or minus B squared. So I'm going to put my 2 in parentheses, or that negative 2, because I want to make sure I incorporate that negative. Minus 4 times A. Now A, remember, when you don't see a number in front of your variable, that is an understood 1. So my coefficient here is 1. And C is negative 3. So don't forget your signs there. All over 2 times A is 1. All right. Simplifying it a little more. So negative times a negative would be a positive, plus or minus negative 2 squared. So negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. And now I have negative 4 times 1, that is negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 3, that is going to be a plus 12. All over 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Simplifying it more. 2 plus or minus 4 plus 12, that is 16. All over 2. And since I'm running out of space, that's going to be 2 plus or minus, the square root of 16 is 4 over 2. So now again, I've got to the point where I want to break it up. And I'm going to put it here. So that's going to be x is equal to 2 plus 4 over 2. And I have to use that minus. So x equals 2 minus 4 over 2. All right. Simplifying it, 2 plus 4, 8 over 2. So one of my answers is 4. X equals 2 minus 4. So that's negative 2 over 2. So my two solutions to this system, or this quadratic equation, is x equals 4 and x equals negative 1. All right, so let's try this problem here. Now with our solutions, it's not just going to be a fraction or a basic whole number. So our answer will be a little different. So let's see what happens. So again, A, B, and C. Plugging it in. X is equal to negative B. So plug in that negative 2 there. Plus or minus B squared. Negative 2 squared minus 4. My A is 1 and C is negative 4. Remember, no coefficient is a 1. All over 2 times 1. Negative times negative, that's 2, plus or minus. Negative 2 squared, that's 4. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 4 is a positive 16. All over 2. And x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 20. What do we notice here? 20 is not a perfect square, so we're going to have to do something with that radical to simplify it. So now I have to write this 20 in what is called simplest radical form. That is where you just take two factors or two numbers you're going to multiply to get 20, but one of those numbers has to be a perfect square. So my factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10. Neither one of those are perfect squares, but 4 and 5. 4 is a perfect square. So if I break up 20 into 4 times 5, 4 is a perfect square. I take the square root of 4 and leave my imperfect square, which is the 5, underneath. So when I simplify it, it's going to be x equal, no, I'm not going to put my x there, just my equal. So 2 plus or minus, instead of putting 20, I'm putting 2 times the square root of 5 over 2. Make sure the number underneath their radical does not have any more factors that are perfect squares, all right? Because if there are, that means you haven't put it in simplest form. So let's simplify it even more. I could write this as, if I break this up into 2 over 2, that reduces to 1, but let me write it out. All right, so 2 over 2 reduces to 1, plus or minus. That 2 over 2 also reduces to 1. We're not going to put the 1. And so I'm left with just the square root of 5. And that is my answer. X is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. If I wanted to break it up into two different numbers, I could write it as x equals 1 plus square root of 5 and x equals 1 minus square root of 5. But either way, it's the same answer. You can write it as 2 or just 1. Or if your assignment calls to just write it as a decimal, that is when you would just put it in your calculator, take the square root of 20, add it to the 2, and so forth. But if it asks for the exact solution, that is where you would need to write it in simplest radical form. All right. All right. So now we're at problem 4, almost done. All right. So just like with our problems before, or problem number 2, we need to move everything to one side. So I'm going to subtract the 2x. Rewrite this as 0 equals 3, not 3, because I want to write it in standard form. So I want my x squared term first. So I'm writing 2x squared first. And next, that will be minus 2x. And then I bring down my constant. It's just easier to label everything when it's in standard form. All right, so let's go ahead and solve it and see what happens. A, B, C, plug it in. Negative b, plus or minus, negative 2 squared, plus, not plus, minus 4 times 2 times 3, all over 2 times 2. Make sure everything is right. Because I would hate to get to the end of a problem and I've done something incorrectly. So always double check to make sure you plug it in correctly before you simplify. All right, so 2, that's positive 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And negative 8 times 3 would be a negative 24. So that would be a minus 24 all over 4. All right. 4 minus 24, that gives me a negative 20. All right. This is interesting. Can we take the square root of a negative number and get a real number? No, we cannot. There are no two numbers that you can multiply to get a negative, or two numbers that you can multiply times itself to get a negative. So we can actually stop here and say that this problem has no real solutions. All right. So our answer to this equation is, there is no answer. All right, so we finally made it to our last problem. So let's go ahead and work it out and see what kind of solution we get. So of course we know that we have to move everything to one side. So that 12x, since it is positive, we want to subtract it. We're left with 0. My x squared term is first. So that's 9x squared minus 12x minus 4. Label it. I just like to use different colors. A, B, and C. So that's x equals negative b. So negative times negative 12 plus or minus b squared. So negative 12 squared minus 4. A is negative 9 and C is negative 4. All right. So, all over 2a. There we go. I plug everything in correctly. Just double checking. All right. So now that will be positive 12 plus or minus. Negative 12 squared is 144. Negative 4 times negative 9 is 36. 36 times negative 4. Can't think of that right off the top of my head. So that's going to be 144. So negative 144. All over negative 18. All right, so we notice 144 minus 144 is 0. And we get negative 18 at the bottom. The square root of 0 is just 0. So that's going to be 12 plus or minus 0 all over 18. And of course, if you add or subtract 0 from anything, it's going to be the same number. So instead of breaking it up, I'm just going to go ahead and reduce 12 over 18, and that reduces to that's divided by 2, so that's 6 over 9. Brain freeze here, and then I can reduce that again to 2 over 3. All right. Okay, so I could have divided by 6. All right. But my final answer is 2/3. And so for this particular problem, I only have one solution. Because if I would have done this, 12 plus 0 over 18. And 12 minus 0 over 18. I get 2/3 here. And I get 2/3 here. So I will get the same thing, which is 2/3. And that is just one solution.